Hello, hello, hello. Oh my gosh, that was like the fastest this thing has ever gone in. I am super excited. Thank you so much for being here. I am here with Maryann. Is it Maryann or Marianna? Maryann.
Maryann.
We're going to be talking about grief. I am super excited about this subject because this is something we don't talk about.
Mhm.
So this is going to be awesome. For those of you that don't know me, I am Sabrina Victoria. I am the host here at Her Talk Show. If you have not subscribed to this podcast, you're going to want to hit that subscribe button. This podcast is guaranteed to have you thinking differently about life, business, and grief. Let's jump right in.
Get ready, because today's guest is about to change the way you view your world. This is Her Talk Show, hosted by Sabrina Victoria.
If you're listening live, welcome. And if you're listening on the replay, make sure you hashtag replay wherever you're at so we can send you some love in the comments. Listen, we have had over 600 women grace this stage. We are adding another one to the list today. Maryann Udel. She unexpectedly was introduced to the world of grief at the age of 24 when her husband died in a vehicle accident. She found a way to live, laugh, and thrive. And in 2015, she officially launched Sheltering Tree to coach and guide people through their grief. She helps them make peace with the past so that they can embrace the promise of their future. I love this. Welcome, Maryann.
Thank you, Sabrina. I am so excited to be here because we need to talk about it. You know, it's, I think that there's just such a stigma around grief, and especially with social media. You know, you have these images that you have to live up to, or you feel that you have to live up to. And if you're going through grief, you do not go look that way at all. And the more we talk about it, the more we can help each other.
Absolutely.
And I think that every person that you know, whether you realize it or not, has something going on. That it doesn't have to be a death. It can be a divorce. It can be a breakup. It can be a job loss. It can be an illness. It can be any kind of loss that you experience. And the more we acknowledge it, that grief is just an emotional response to loss and change.
Absolutely.
So it's very simple. And when people approach me and ask me, I don't know, I'm broken. There's something wrong. I don't know what to do. And I think that there's this misconception that there's a right way to do it, that there's a checklist to follow, or that there's some sort of linear way to go through your grief. And it's that you think it's going to be this, and it's the scribble picture that you get some guidelines. Those stages of grief that you hear about are just indicators of what you might experience. You know, that you might go through anger. You might go through depression. You're going to bargain. You're going to maybe accept. But you can go through all of those things more than once. And you might feel them at the same time. So it can be a little maddening. And people try to push it down or ignore it. But doing that just delays the process. It will come out sooner or later. It's like a pressure cooker building up. And you have to let off the steam. So, and if you don't do that, that's when you have illness. That's when you have breakdown. You might depend on a coping mechanism to help yourself get through it. You might become dependent on some pills or drinking or shopping. With me, I got busy. You know, busyness can be a great way to avoid your feelings. If you're always doing something, then you don't have time to really allow the feelings out. But it'll come out sooner or later. I had a woman I met at a networking meeting, and at one particular meeting, she came up to me and said, I think I need to work with you. I'm crying all the time. Well, as it turned out, her father had died when she was 13, and she was not allowed to go to the funeral. She was not allowed to express her grief because she was told she had to take care of her little brother and be strong for her mother. And this woman was in her 60s when she came to me. After about a year, we worked together, and she resolved and was able to express all of those unexpressed emotions that she'd held for all those years. So they were coming out, even though she had not been allowed to feel her grief, to go through her emotions.
What a great thing to think about as far as what we say to people.
Well, there's no fixing. There's no platitude that is going to change or make the situation better. Acknowledge that you don't know what to say. And that's sometimes the best thing. I am so sorry. I don't know what to say. I'm here if you feel like talking. And you don't need to say anything. You can listen and let them talk. You can ask them, if someone has died, you can ask questions. Can you tell me, what's your favorite thing about him? What did you really enjoy doing? And that can, because there's a need to talk about your person. There's a need to talk about what really is going on. It could be, even if it's a divorce, let somebody vent. I was working with a company that was going through some massive layoffs, and they hired me to be on call to help to not only be part of the exit package for people that were laid off, so they could just get it off their chest, and but also to be available for the people that were left behind, because there was no other way to resolve the change that was going on. And me being available for both the people being laid off and the employees left behind meant that the company didn't have to worry about lawsuits. They didn't have to worry about people feeling scared about what was happening next. It helped the company maintain some productivity as the change was happening, acknowledging what was the reality of the situation. So,
Very interesting.
That there's a lot of ways that people will deal with grief. And when they're pissed off, they just want to be heard.
Mm.
Well, I guess feeling any of the feelings, there's a need to be acknowledged.
Yeah. I would love for you to expand a little bit on, you had mentioned that sometimes they fall into outside sources. You mentioned pills, alcohol, shopping, staying busy. Is this a way to heal? Is this something we should be aware of? Is this healthy? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that there can be the distraction that can help to give you some temporary assistance. But I think there's the danger of it being a dependence, of it becoming an addiction. That I know that there are doctors who subscribe or prescribe pills to help widows going through the initial shock and pain. But I've talked to women who rejected it because they really wanted to feel their feelings. It's just a mask. It's just a cover. It's just an avoidance. So in the long run, it's not a positive route to follow.
As far as a timeline goes, you had mentioned that, it's different and it could, you mentioned the story. I love that story you told of, 40 years later or something, 45 years later, somebody dealing with, grief, really showcasing how they come in different orders, sometimes all at the same time, sometimes longer than others.
Right.
How do we have a ton of people watching live, by the way. Thank you so much for being here and hanging out with us. But they're obviously resonating with what you're saying. So when we're talking to somebody who, is maybe dealing with this or has dealt with it, I guess it's an ongoing thing. What are some suggestions? What are some steps that somebody could take to really give themselves grace during this time?
Well, I think, first of all, just acknowledge that there is no end, that it's an evolution. Whatever it is that happened is part of you now. It's like if you broke a bone when you were a kid, it's going to show up, the remains of that place where the bone mended. Or if you got stitches somewhere, you're going to have a scar. So when a loss occurs, that is an emotional scar, and it's part of who you are now. When I met my second husband, that was the one thing that I really appreciated about him. He acknowledged, when I told him that I was a widow, that he wanted to hear more, because he knew that that was part of who I am, that the life I had before and going through the, becoming a widow that young, that was a big part of who I was. So he wanted to know, who is this man that she lived with and married before? Who is this person that lost somebody she loved deeply? He wanted to know more about my first husband's personality and what he was like. And that was so different from anybody else that I dated after the fact, that it was every other guy just ran for the hills. They were, what? I don't know. But there is an evolution to every grief that you go through. And everything that you experience is going to be a little different. You're not going to process the exact same way. So the best thing that you can do in the early days is start every day with, how am I feeling and why? Just acknowledge whatever feelings are coming up. And it doesn't have to, I know that I've heard from some people that I'm not going to be able to stop crying. Well, it might feel that way for a little while, but know that it does end. That there's a tsunami that sort of hits you and you're turned upside down. You can't get your bearing. You can barely breathe. You can't get your feet on the ground. So you're just tossed about in this whirlwind of grief. But as the waves diminish, you can get your feet on the ground. You can get your head above water. You can find your bearings, and then your feet are still a little wet, but you're able to move forward. You're able to survey the situation and figure out, okay, now what? And there's still going to be storms that happen. There's still going to be waves that will hit you, but they're not permanent. We just went through the winter solstice, the longest night of the year. So acknowledging that there will be an end to this, that each day there's a few seconds more of daylight, a few minutes more, and eventually there'll be brighter days. So those are, there is no rule book. And I think that's the part that's frustrating for people. I want to know what I'm supposed to do when, and that's what frustrated me a lot too.
Exactly.
They're what do I do?
Yeah.
And the best thing to do is find people that understand you, that won't try to make you get over it. And sometimes your friends are not the best people for that, because they have a hard time, because it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You know, like you said, you don't know what to say, but the best thing you can do is find people who you can just talk with. Being able to express your vulnerability without feeling like something's wrong.
Absolutely. I really appreciate everything that you said. 100% makes sense. And I really see how this could relate to other things, which I really appreciate. You know, I know sometimes, or all the time, you know, we as humans, we're always looking for like the rule book or the step by step, you know, 1, 2, 3, and, you know, really having open conversations about this, like you said, on there are no rules.
Right.
And there is no step by step, and you're kind of making it up as you go along. I would love to talk a little bit, and you kind of mentioned this, you know, in the beginning, but I want to dive into the other side. So the friend, the partner, you know, the kids. What is some advice on how to speak to, handle, be with someone who has lost, you know, someone close to them?
Some of it depends on the relationship that you have with them. With children, it's always a good idea to get a professional involved, to have a counselor or a therapist or someone who is qualified to be able to speak to the kids in a way that they're able to understand without saying like, so-and-so is sleeping. You know, I think that was a mistake someone made to someone when my husband died. They told this younger girl that he's asleep, or he went to sleep, and she was afraid to go to bed after that. So you don't want to use any euphemisms when you're talking about death or illness. You want to be as real as possible. If it's a friend, you can just love them. You can do things for them. You can go to the grocery store. You can walk their dog. You can invite them to go for a walk. But it's just knowing that you're not avoiding them. You know, if somebody is out on bereavement at work, and when they come back, no one talks to them, or they're avoiding it, or they're lowering their eyes, avoiding eye contact because they don't want to make you feel bad, that just makes it worse. That there's how much worse could you make them feel? You want to acknowledge that that they just came back from something really difficult. Said, you know, I'm really sorry. I don't know what to say, but I'm here. So that kind of thing, it's just acknowledge that there's no words that are going to change it or fix it, and just be there. Send text messages saying, how are you doing today? It's not just how are you doing, but how are you doing today? Because every day is going to be a little bit different.
Yeah. I like the question that you gave in this example. You said asking something like, what was your favorite thing about them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because there's always going to, I don't know. I've been at wakes after a funeral, and you could have people sobbing 1 minute, and then the next minute they're laughing hysterically because of some memory. Do you remember when it was like, so it's just, the emotions are going to do that you're going to ride this roller coaster and waves, and things are not going to be clear in the beginning. So you have to acknowledge that you're not going to be the person you were before this happened. There is physically a brain fog that happens, and your energy is low, your immune system is low. So it's just hunker down and take care of yourself.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any advice on maybe, where I can only imagine, as you're speaking, talking about, somebody maybe putting their head down and not speaking, and realizing that that's like a thing that is a change in the dynamic of friends and family that will happen. And I can only imagine how lonely it could start to feel.
Yes. And I think that just exacerbates the pain, that you feel like you're all alone. And you might have to be a little proactive. If you're going to a party, or if you've been invited to a party or something, you can say to the hostess, I appreciate you inviting me. Right now, I don't, this is the best way for people to talk to me. Or saying to your group of friends, I know that nobody wants to talk about it or is afraid to bring it up, but I want to let you know that I am fine. I'm going through this and it's hard, but the best thing you can do right now is just give me a hug, or whatever it is that you need. I just need to be by myself for a little bit, but please check on me. You have to teach people how to treat you. You have to ask them not to try and fix anything. Please don't give me any platitudes. That really made me pissed off when people did that. What do you mean he's in a better place? That's ridiculous. He should be here.
Yeah.
God has a plan. That's a good one. But yeah, that none of that is going to change the situation, and it really doesn't make you feel better.
Yeah.
So
totally.
Yeah.
And I also think that there's a time and a place for some of that also. You said some people are very, very religious, and
okay.
And then other people are not. So like you have to know the person before saying something like that. Like, don't assume everyone has your same faith.
I was raised very, very, I was born and raised a Catholic. And so I do have that religion background, and those God has a plan that came from a nun. And even though I know she meant well, it still didn't make me feel better. And my sister said it did make her feel better. So everybody is different.
Yeah.
You just have to know who it is you're talking with and if that would help or not. For me, it did not.
Yeah.
I can only speak from my personal experience.
Yeah.
But I know that platitudes in general don't change or fix anything.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I'd love to talk a little bit about, and I'm not speaking from any sort of experience here, but just from viewing other people, other stories, this thought process of somebody who maybe passes away on a holiday, or somebody who passes away on a month or an era that is normally very exciting. And then feeling as if you can never be happy on that day again.
Yeah, that comes up right now a lot. Not just if somebody passes away during a particular joyful time of year, but going through those first things. You can set up traditions, new traditions to honor the person. You can look for ways to celebrate differently. You probably won't have a holly jolly Christmas all the time, but you can focus on what brings you joy. Focus on the most important things that you enjoy, not the things that you feel obligated to do. It is possible to find the joy again, but it'll be different. You might want to simplify, but think about what can you do to honor the person who's gone? Was there something that they really enjoyed, or their favorite food, and you want to have that as a way to remember them, or everybody tells a story about them? That there can be, I know someone who keeps a poster of all of these special memories of her son, and then every year just adds something different to it. So everybody you can choose what you do. You don't have to feel obligated to be a certain way.
Yeah.
Does that help?
Yeah, I really like this idea as far as creating a new tradition, because I feel like that really allows a segment of time to be dedicated to that person, almost like a block, and then could give that person and family and friends permission to then be okay and enjoy themselves.
And you don't have to feel guilty for being happy.
Yeah.
After something happens, whether it's an illness or a death or a breakup or a job loss or anything, you can be happy, and you don't have to feel like you're doing anything wrong. Before I got remarried, I felt like I was cheating on my first husband. I was having this real existential moment where I'm saying goodbye to everything that was, but it was not. It just became another segment, another chapter.
Yeah.
All of the other chapters led up to that, and it's still part of who I am.
Yeah, absolutely. This has been enlightening. I'm assuming that everyone is getting a really good idea of what you do, but I would love for you, since we do have quite a few people watching live, I would love for you to share a little bit about, who exactly you help, who should be reaching out to you, for assistance or coaching.
It can range anywhere from individuals who are having a hard time dealing with their loss, and it can be any kind of loss. I've had clients who've gone through a divorce, who have lost their job, who have dealt with a death, dealt with illness, even dealing with a mom who had Alzheimer's. So you're dealing with all sorts of kinds of grief. I've dealt with young adult cancer survivors. So all of those things are times when you're going to feel some grief, and you might not know what to do now, because the things that you were planning, you can't do anymore. Your plans have to be revised. So that's the process that I take my clients through. I help them make peace with all of the stuff that happened, get fully present, and figure out, okay, now what? And then create a plan for what's next. So it's it can be anywhere in the grief process. It can be years after the fact. It can be something that's fresh. But anyone who feels like they don't know what to do, how do I move forward? I'm not sure what to do next.
Got it. As far as anyone who'd like to see more information about you or check out your social media, where can people find you?
Well, my website is yourshelteringtree.com, and that's the handle on Instagram at Your Sheltering Tree. There's Facebook, both Sheltering Tree and my personal Maryann Roses Udel, and on LinkedIn, Maryann Udel. So all of those areas are places where you can connect with me.
Beautiful. And why do you do what you do?
To honor my first husband.
Mm.
And I don't want anyone else to feel lost and alone the way I did. You know, at the age of 24, and as you can tell, it's been quite a while since that's happened. And I wanted to, there wasn't social media. There weren't any support groups for young widows. There was nothing, no internet. So I had to figure it out on my own. And it took a long time. And it was a very hard process. And every challenge that happened along the way, just, okay, now what?
Mm.
And I don't want anyone else to feel that alone.
Well, so appreciate you being here. So appreciate what you do. For those listening live or on the replay who are resonating with Maryann and her journey, her story, her insight here, make sure you find her at yourshelteringtree.com. It is in a clickable link in the description wherever you're watching us at, or you can take a screenshot of the screen if you're watching us on video. She predominantly hangs out on Instagram and LinkedIn. We love to connect people here on this platform in order to make sure that we all continue to rise. Maryann.
Sabrina.
This has been phenomenal. Any closing thoughts?
You're not broken. If you're dealing with grief, you're human. Let yourself be human.
You're not broken. You're human. I love that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I really, what you said earlier, as far as somebody not wanting to take medication because they wanted to be able to feel.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of being human.
Yeah. Yeah. She said she felt like there was this buffer over her. There was this fog, and it just was uncomfortable. So she said, nope, I'm going to, whatever is going to come out needs to come out.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you so much, Maryann, for all of this. That brings us to an end of yet another incredible episode of her talk show. I want to thank you for taking some time out of your day to come on, share with us, inspire us with your story and with your insights.
Thanks for this opportunity, Sabrina.
Thank
you. The more we talk about it, the easier it will get.
Exactly. To our dedicated listeners, thank you for staying with us until the very end. Remember to follow, like, and share. Once again, I am your host, Sabrina Victoria, and I invite you to join our amazing community, Her Nation, where we continue to uplift each other every step of the way. Until